Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Monday, March 20th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. Start spreading the news. K-State from the Little Apple is headed to the Big Apple. The Wildcats won their way to the East Regional Sweet 16 with a dramatic 75-69 victory over Kentucky on Sunday in Greensboro, North Carolina. Kentucky led for much of the game, but K-State point guard Markquis Nowell wouldn't let his team lose. He played an amazing game with 27 points and 9 assists. And in the game's biggest sequence, Ishmael Massoud and Keontae Johnson hit huge three-pointers to create some separation late in the game. So the wild ride in Coach Jerome Tang's first season as a head coach continues, and that's our topic on today's SportsBeat KC with beat writer Kellis Robinett. After our discussion of the Wildcats' victory, you'll hear my conversation with K-State Athletic Director Gene Taylor. We talked basketball the day before the Kentucky game, and Taylor shares his thoughts on the program and is there a contract extension coming soon for Jerome Tang. Okay, let's get started. Kellis, as we have this conversation, I imagine Kansas State has just taken off from the Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem Airport and is winging its way back to the Little Apple, about to pack their bags to go to the Big Apple. And quite a joyous plane ride it will be for the Wildcats, the Purple Wildcats, who just beat Kentucky 75-69 in the second round of the NCAA Tournament. I didn't know how this was going to unfold. I thought Kentucky would win the game. I was proven wrong. And surprised Markquis Nowell didn't just come over and, point in my face or something. But he was the big difference in this game, wasn't he not?
He was not only the biggest difference in this game, I think he's proven to be the brightest star in this NCAA tournament. Maybe that was unexpected that he would play at this level, but I mean, who's better? The only guy you could say who maybe has been better is Oscar Tshiebwe, and he's done.
He's out.
He's going home. He had 25 points and 17 or 18 rebounds today. I forget the exact number. And that stat line, as good as it wasn't enough to win. It wasn't enough to outshine Markquis Nowell, who had 27 and 9. Just an incredible game from him. And I think the most impressive thing about it was that he was able to kind of dig deep to do it. It's not like he came out and had a game where he was just purely on fire, making shots all over. He actually started off not making much of anything, had to be a facilitator. But then he found it in the second half when Kentucky gets up early. I believe it was by 8 points in the second half, start on a run. He kind of said, you know what, I want to go to New York. I want to go home. I want to play in the Garden. I'm dragging Kansas State here if I got to do it. And he starts making threes, starts making great passes. And it was interesting. Nobody on Kansas State's team made a three until about the 15-minute mark in the second half when he made one, and that opened the floodgates for everything. He made two more. Ish comes off the bench and makes one. Keontae makes an absurd one when he does a step back. Fueled everything. So, I mean, every game's a team effort, a team win, but if you got to give it, if you got to give anybody MVP honors here, it's pretty clearly Nowell. That was up there. I'm sorry I'm rambling here, but
no, it's
think about this. People, the last time Kansas State beat Kentucky, Barry Brown had a great game. Mm-hmm. So good that, people say he's probably one day going to have his jersey retired in Manhattan, Bramlage Coliseum. He's a legend because he won that game. I mean, Nowell was better, I think. Right. I mean, do we need to start having that conversation about him? I mean, shoot, they're going to the Sweet 16. He's had this great game. And right before that, he had 17 and 14 against Montana State. There's no better point guard out there right now.
No, and I agree with you, and I tweeted it out that if there was an MVP for the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament, it would be him. Look, a lot of people have scored more. I don't think anybody would have more assists than the 23 that he has in two games, but people have shot it better, but nobody had a bigger impact on victories, the two victories for his team, than Markquis Nowell. He was terrific. You talked about the first three-pointer that he hit. That was the one that, from the deep corner, that tied the game at 39 after, as you said, Kentucky had gone on an 11-0 run. K-State scored the first bucket out of halftime to increase its three-point halftime lead to 5. And then Kentucky went 11-0 and missed two free throws in that stretch too. Mm-hmm. So I thought at that point Kansas State was in trouble.
I thought they were going to lose at that moment.
I thought the end of the first half was a great confidence boost for K-State. The way Nowell had the behind the back pass,
two of them,
between the legs pass, and then the no look pass to end the half. They were incredible, and I thought this was a team that's going to go into halftime with confidence and swagger, and they know they can play with these guys. And instead, Kentucky comes out and takes over before the first media timeout of the second half, and this is going to be Kentucky's game, and they're going to get the stink of last year's NCAA tournament loss to St. Peter's, out of their system, but Markquis Nowell would not let it happen. He had 23 of his 27 in the second half.
I thought it was very interesting that while I think both of us thought that, okay, Kentucky flipped the switch there at the start of the second half. They were creating turnovers. They were hitting Kansas State where they hurt the most. And we saw that they just can't score in the midcourt or in half-court sets. They either get the ball to Oscar or they miss a three. Really, their best offense is missing a shot and having him go back and make it.
Yeah.
But in that moment, they found other ways to score, and that's where Kansas State struggles. We've seen time and time again this season. They have a few bad stretches like that, and it kills them in the game. I thought it was very interesting that all the credit we're giving to Markquis Nowell. Jerome Tang had a great timeout in that moment. I mean, any coach would call timeout there, but he pretty much, for the length of that long media timeout, he didn't even really talk to his team. He was talking to his coaches.
You pointed that out to me. I was looking at my screen, and you pointed out.
Trying to figure out what in the world to do. And I asked him about it after the game. That was I don't normally see you consult with your coaches for 2 minutes before you go over and talk to the guys. I thought maybe they were coming up with some wizardry in there or something. And he more or less said, we talked about some strategy, but mostly he just thought his guys needed to calm down. Let's let them rest, let them think about stuff, reset. Pretty much just came back in and said, all right, they had the run. Now let's go on ours and win. And it worked. And I think not only was Nowell the best player in this game, I think Jerome Tang was the best coach in this game by far. I think he ran circles around Calipari as a coach.
No, I agree. I don't think that can be denied. And if you happen to venture on to some of the Kentucky message boards right now, not too happy with John Calipari as the coach. But that's how it goes with Kentucky.
Yeah, it is. And he's had a bizarre arc this season. A few weeks ago, everyone said, yeah, he can just go ahead and go to Texas if they want him. And they win a few games. Okay, now we're looking good. Probably at halftime, or when they were going on that run, things were looking good. But, not so great. Big Blue Nation today. I bet they're tired of playing Kansas State in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I bet they are. I didn't use this, and I don't even think it's worth tweeting. But in 2018. And this is more of a Kansas City note than it is a Kansas State note. But in 2018, Kentucky lost to Kansas, Missouri, and Kansas State during the season, and that happened this year as well.
Wow!
For the only teams it's the only 2 times it's happened. So I find that interesting. And one of those teams in 2018 went on to the Final Four, KU with Devontae Graham, and so maybe that's what's going to happen to the Wildcats here, who we now know are going to take on Michigan State in the Sweet 16 at Madison Square Garden. So
a mild surprise there. I really don't even know what to tell you about Michigan State because I was so confident that Marquette would be in that game.
You're talking about my national champion, Marquette?
Hey, I had him in my Final Four too. Y'all can laugh at me at this. I put a small futures bet in on Marquette to win the East region when it came out. I thought they were such a bad matchup for Kansas State because they create more turnovers than any team in the country. They offensive rebound like Kentucky. They score at the rim. I did not see Kansas State beating Marquette. But the beauty of this tournament, much like I've said, when the last time Kansas State went on their run and Virginia was sitting there in the way, somebody else beat them for them. And they were able to move on. And now we see the same thing here. They get to play a Michigan State team that, while I'm sure they will still be a difficult matchup.
It will. With great coach.
Great coach to kind of reverse what you see today. Tom Izzo's not going to get out there and just say, all right, we're going to put up threes and hope that we get the rebounds here, boys. They're not going to roll the ball out there and just hope to win. As you can tell, I was really, really not impressed with Kentucky's coaching today, if you couldn't tell. They'll coach good. They're physical. Big Ten team, I'm sure they'll have, a good front court here ready to go. But I'm sure if you put some truth serum into those Kansas State coaches, they're happy to play Michigan State as opposed to Marquette.
No doubt about it. I want to offer another impression that I had about Kansas State, and this was before the game. This was actually on Saturday when the players and the coaches meet reporters in the off day. And so we know it's the Kansas State-Kentucky matchup. And I think I can't remember who went first. It had to be Kentucky because Kansas played the last game on Friday. And one thing I heard from the players at the podium, not so much in the locker room, but at the podium, was how much confidence they had going up against Kentucky. And this was before they had seen film of them and had scouting report. But their rationale seemed to be, well, we're from the best conference in the country, the Big 12, and we're the 3 seed and they're the 6 seed. And I'm not saying that they disrespected Kentucky's history and tradition or Oscar Tshiebwe or any of their players, but I looked at the Kentucky-Kansas State game as Kentucky had been playing better down the stretch. They had a player in Tshiebwe that Kansas State was going to be a handful for the Wildcats, just like he was for Providence in their opening game when he had 25 rebounds. But Kansas State, almost like a collective yawn about who the opponent was. They weren't overly they obviously prepared well and played well, won the game, but it struck me that they were not intimidated at all playing Big Blue Nation in the game, and except for a couple of stretches, and I imagine Kentucky led more of the game than Kansas State did today. I don't have it in front of me. Kansas State, and especially Markquis Nowell, did not, could have cared less about who the opponent was. They just played a terrific game, except for some distant shooting. They played a terrific game, well prepared, well coached, and met every challenge. Didn't let any deficit get too big, and in the end, when the game was a toss-up, and it was a toss-up game with 2 minutes to go, Kansas State made the plays. They made all the plays down the stretch. Yeah, and their clutch gene was so good in this game. Think about this: they beat Kentucky in a game where they didn't make a 3 in the first half. Started 0 for 15 from 3, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Early on this season, in the Big 12, if they do that, they're losing to everybody in the league. They're not beating Texas Tech. They're not beating TCU. They're not beating anybody with that kind of stat line. So it shows you the kind of grit that they came into this game with. And a few shout-outs I'll give for certain guys in this one going up against Kentucky. I think David Gasson had a lot of very underrated minutes.
Absolutely he did. A couple of big rebounds.
Big rebounds, scored a couple points. Very good defense, I thought. At least physical defense. Like, he was not making things easy on Oscar at all.
Right.
And contested a lot of those entry passes, so he wasn't just getting layups.
And I talked to him about that after the game. And one thing I told him I noticed was that often when Tshiebwe got the ball down low, he was trying to get his hands on the ball. You're rarely going to block a Tshiebwe shot, but you can try to tie him up or knock the ball out of his hands. And I thought Gasson did a great. I know I'm not pronouncing it right. Gasson, thank you.
A silent N.
Okay, Gasson was doing a terrific job with that, and then he thanked me for noticing. So I thought that was cool.
He also had a tremendous 1 minute stretch where he lost his shoe and only could get it halfway on and was kind of hobbling around the court and still managed to get I wouldn't say he got a rebound, but he tipped it to somebody else so he could get the rebound with one shoe on. So to come up with that kind of play in a game like this with one shoe, very memorable. I'd also say I thought Desi Sills played really well.
Yes.
Not the most impressive stat line in the world, but he was putting his body on the line.
Bad hip. He's already got a bad hip.
Bad hip. Putting his body on the line, and he totally, downplayed it afterwards, saying he didn't even have to take any charges in this game or anything like that. And it also struck me that, the players afterward were all very much, I don't know, they didn't quite puff out their chest as much as I thought they would about this. Like you were saying, I think they just kind of expected to win. And really the one guy who kind of did do a little, chest pounding was Coach Jerome Tang.
Yes.
But he did it in a good way. It's not like, I coached this, I won this. I loved the quote he said when somebody asked him, does it mean any more to beat a traditional power like Kentucky? And his answer was along the lines of, tradition is meaningless. The guys who used to play here and win all those games for him aren't coming back. You're not going to win regardless of who you are, unless you have dudes on the floor, and we had more dudes than they did. So, I mean, just right there, he pretty much just said we have better players than Kentucky. And that fueled all these guys. I think Cam Carter, the sophomore guard for Kansas State, gave me the quote after the game saying that he thought that not only did they prove they were the better team in this game, he thought, now, I mean, obviously, a little grain of salt here, he's a little biased. He said he thinks Kansas State has proven they're the best team in the country, and they're going to keep going.
Wow. They are the best seeded team left in the region. This was Purdue and Marquette's region. Mm-hmm. Purdue was the 1, Marquette was the 2. They're both out. Kansas State is the 3. Duke was the 5. It is out. Who was the 4 in the East? Tennessee, and they looked really good knocking Duke out of the tournament. So Michigan State's 7 seed, and so Kansas State, the highest remaining seed left in the East region.
Yeah, they'll be wearing white every game in the tournament. The only hard part for them is, do they stick with the cursive white, the script that they've been wearing with the little lavender accents, or they're undefeated in them in this tournament, or do they go to the block letters that they've worn during the regular season? I believe they were undefeated in those the regular season too. Maybe they had one loss in there. I don't remember, but I guess it's good to have those choices.
Yes, right? And I don't know if you screw around with what's been working in the tournament.
Yeah, I'd go ahead and just keep wearing the ones you've worn so far. And it is interesting though. I guess I didn't really even realize that they are the seed favorite the rest of the way. And
of course, they weren't a betting favorite against Kentucky, were they?
No, they weren't. And I assume it'll be probably a pick'em, close to a pick'em against Michigan State. I don't see either team being favored by more than one possession there. And I certainly wouldn't overlook the rest of this region. Tennessee, when they play good on defense, very, very hard to beat.
Yep.
And Florida Atlantic, they're up right now. We're recording this before that game's over. They're up early in the first half. If they go on to win, I watched them this regular season, and even though they're from a smaller conference, Conference USA, they're legit. They are good. So I don't want to bring up bad memories here, but if there's an Elite Eight involving Florida Atlantic and Kansas State,
I know what you're going to say.
Very much be Loyola Chicago, Kansas State. It's not a game where you could just look at it and say, oh, well, it's Florida Atlantic. They're a 9 seed. They're going to be pushover. No, they're legit. Tennessee's good. Michigan State, like I said, I haven't done any research on them yet, but hey, keeping Tom Izzo out of the Final Four is always hard. So, but I will say it's much preferable to Marquette and Purdue being in there. I think
for sure. Okay,
maybe not Purdue.
Purdue would have been interesting with Edney, but we're not going to see that. Fairleigh Dickinson had the incredible upset. So, all right, Kellis, you are going to have a quick turnaround. You're going to go home, going to wash your clothes, get a little sleep, and then you're going to head to New York and cover the East region. I'm going to just stay in Kansas City and cover the Midwest region with Texas and Houston there, among other teams. It's not set yet as of this recording, and I've had a great time covering this region with you. We've had a good time going to what I'll call my ancestral homeland of Greensboro. I grew up in Raleigh, just a little while away. So,
well, I just hope that once you hand the baton off to Vahe Gregorian and he comes up to New York City, we can find a similar assortment of good tasting beer and tasty food in that city as we did here, because you had some excellent eating recommendations, and you could probably write your own blog about where to go and eat in North Carolina.
And that is Vahe's, not his hometown, but town he knows very well.
Okay,
where he has family. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, you're going to hear my interview with Gene Taylor, the Kansas State athletic director. We talked about Jerome Tang this season, and hear what Gene Taylor has to say about a possible contract extension for the Kansas State coach. Hey, this is Blair. There are several ways to access the Star Sports section. Let me tell you about a couple of them. There is Sports Pass. For $12.99 a month, you get unlimited digital access to all of the Star Sports content, including beat writing, columns, features, pretty much everything we write. The deal renews monthly until you tell us to cancel. For $159.99 a year, you get everything the Star has to offer digitally, including sports and the e-edition. Go to kansascity.com and drop down to the bottom of the page where it says Start a Subscription for more information. Your support has never been more important. As always, thanks for reading and listening. You and Coach Tang made it for other schools. to hire a coach and say, give him 3 or 4 years to get his own guys in, his own program? And
I honestly hope it's the opposite. I hope that ADs will see that there are still a lot of really good coaches that are top assistants to think about.
It was a different path.
It's a different path, and just because some of us, and I mean me, get in our heads sometimes, we got to have a sitting head coach, So I really hope that he's been able to prove to ADs and other top assistants that, hey, I know what I'm doing. I can do it. Sometimes learning curves greater, but you got to just have patience. But I hope that's the case as opposed to making it harder.
Well, it sounds like you were willing to have patience, but you didn't really need it.
No, I was. And, I knew that for a couple of reasons. One, he had 2 guys on his roster. And I knew, just making it. And everybody that I've hired that had never been a head coach before, and I've hired a lot of them from North Dakota State to here, there is an adjustment because as an assistant, you do so much, right? And then as a head coach, you want to be able to do all that, but you got to learn to delegate. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges is being able to delegate. And I think he was able to come in and do that. He obviously hired a lot of assistants that he trusted and knew well. And sometimes that's a challenge because you got to hire your buddies as opposed to that's something you kind of caution against. New head coaches, just don't go hire all your buddies. Go hire a good mix, and he's done that. He's got great experience. He's got guys that been head coaches. He's got good recruiters, so he did a good job of putting the staff together. But a lot of times, first-time head coaches just go out and give their buddies a chance, and then it doesn't work.
So was that one of the early signs for you that
we talked about that in the interview process.
Okay.
Tell me about your staff. What's your staff going to look like? And he had a couple of names, but then he actually said, I'm going to probably go out and find a guy that has been a head coach that understands what it takes to be a head coach. And that to me was something really important.
How about, what did he tell you about putting his roster together? Because that was, starting from scratch, basically.
I'll be honest with you. He said, when we were sitting in, I told this a couple times, I told it to Jerome the other night. So when we were sitting in July, we had 5 guys. I was like, this is making me a little nervous. And I went to him, it might have even been late July and early August. I said, Coach, are you getting nervous? And he goes, nope. And I said, are you sure you're not just hiding from me? Because I'm getting nervous. We have 5 guys. We need a couple guys to be able to sub. I was kind of joking, but he goes, Gene, we're going to get dudes, but we're going to get the right dudes. And I will find those dudes. And he did that. And maybe he was a little more nervous than he let on, but I never got that sense from him. The confidence that he had of, I'm going to build a pretty good roster. Now, once he got set and everybody we had a couple guys, Desi, got in a little bit later and whatnot. But once everybody got here, we sat down and I said, hey, what do you think kind of year we? He said, Gene, I really like these guys. I think it'll take us a while to gel. Because I think by the end of the season, we should be a pretty good tournament team.
He used the word tournament.
Yeah, like we would get in.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be he said, I think we'll be a tournament team. And I'm like, okay, now a 3-seed tournament team? I don't think any of us saw that coming. But he thought he would be able to mold them together to us get in the tournament. And he's right.
And so I wrote it down somewhere here. I think Kansas State was 34-58 or 38-54 in the previous 3 years since Bruce's last tournament team. And for him to make that statement, feel that confident about it, it suggests that he, has a great confidence in what he's doing.
And that was very consistent from the time we met him. It wasn't overconfident, it wasn't cockiness, it was more assuredness. And when the first hour that we met him in Kansas City, when he left, I said, fellas, that guy just set the bar. If we can find anybody that gets over that bar, we're going to be really lucky. And then when we got him, went to his house, and we had a couple 3 hours with him. He just you just got that from him. This really high confidence in his ability to X and O, his ability to recruit, his ability to put his staff together, and it's just been that way ever since he got there. Obviously, the 19 years under Scott Drew, he was probably as much of a head coach later in those years than probably a lot of top assistants might be. And it showed how quickly he was able to adjust.
So he's one of 14 first-year coaches in basic major college, or Power 5, plus the Big East. 3 of them hadn't coached before, ever been head coaches. Kenny Payne at Louisville, who had a really tough season. John Shire at Duke, who was on Coach K's staff and knew a year in advance he was going to be the head coach and begin to shape. And Jerome Tagg, who in late July, early August, had 5 guys on his roster. So, I don't know. I think if I'm thinking about a first-year coach of the year, it would be Jerome Tagg.
I don't know how it can't be. And just generally coach of the year. I mean, I know there's some other good names on there that have had success, but what he walked into, 2 players, first-time head coach, and ended up being bottom of the barrel. What they suggested we were going to be bottom, 10 out of 10 in the Big 12 to finish third and be a 3 seed. All those things and how we won games, who we beat on the road. It's impressive. It's impressive.
And, you don't have to respond to this because it's hypothetical, but, well, let me put it this way. What did you want to see from him when you hired him? What would have been an acceptable progress?
I knew from listening to him about X and O, preparation for teams in our competitive. I wanted to see us be competitive, and I wanted us to be at a point where we got to the end of the year. Again, we'd either be not necessarily fighting for a Big 12 championship, but fighting for opportunity. We played in some sort of postseason. And I was thinking it's got to be great if we went to the NIT. But as the year went along, and it was, trying to be realistic and not set too high of standards for him. It was just come in, let's be competitive. Let's get the energy back in the dome. Let's get our fans excited about K-State basketball, and he's done all of that.
That too. It comes along with success, of course, the renewed interest. But that's been amazing. And to me, the other aspect is he got student body fans to change the mindset a little bit.
Yep. That chant thing. We tried everything. Bill Snyder, you name it, and he does it in 6 months.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's just kind of who he is as a person. I mean, he's got a very infectious personality.
So do you have to think about extending?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I want him to know that we want him. And, I don't know. His phone may be ringing, may not be. If it isn't, that doesn't mean why we want to at least have that conversation. I mean, we made a fair deal for a guy who'd never been a head coach, but he's proven that, he can be good. And so we probably need to sit down and look at what we put together to start with and see if there's something, we need to make sure he's comfortable staying at K-State for as long as we keep him.
And that would happen after the season.
Yeah. He needs to focus on beating Kentucky and all that. And that's typically what I've done is, occasionally I'll get a call from the agent, but usually it's just been, hey, and they ultimately the agents get involved.
Right. You got to feel pretty good about the head coaches in the 2 highest profile sports at Kansas State University.
I do. I mean, obviously, I knew one very well, and that was obviously we still had really good candidates. 2 of them were Power 5 head coaches that were part of the other candidates, and they were successful. But I knew Chris, and I knew who he was, and that one I knew was probably going to be pretty good, and I just knew this one eventually would, just because of. But I didn't know him. I didn't know him personally like I did Chris. But to have those, kind of critical hires doing as well, it makes everything a lot easier.
Puts a smile on everybody's face.
Okay. Keeps the pressure on.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye. That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC crew of Monty Davis, Randy Mason, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the cap to Kellis Robinett for sharing his insights. All of the NCAA Tournament coverage and everything else in sports was part of today's Morning Sports Edition, the best digital sports page in the land. Check it out at liveedition.kansascity.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.